Heavy rainstorms that swept across southern China over the weekend threatened to upend the lives of tens of millions of rescuers and are racing against rain, rising floodwaters, and time to evacuate trapped residents. Guangdong province, an economic powerhouse which is home to some 127 million people. According to reports, flooding has forced more than 110,000 people to be relocated. The floods which swamped the cities in the densely populated Pearl River Delta has killed at least 4 in Guangdong province, including a rescue worker, while at least 10 people remain missing. In parts of the province, a cleanup process has begun, and emergency workers and residents are working in unison. The torrential rain has caused swelling of rivers in Guangdong, prompting state media to warn of the risk of floods at a level seen around once a century. According to the state media report, a total of 45 rivers and 66 hydrologic stations in South China's Guangdong province reported water levels surpassing the alert threshold. Footage from across Guangdong showed flooded villages, farmland and cities, along with collapsed bridges and floating vehicles. The world is becoming hotter. In the past few months, Earth has recorded its hottest month ever. The unprecedented hot streak is now impacting the permafrost, which is historically known for its carbon sink ability. Permafrost is permanently frozen layer on or under the Earth's surface. It consists of soil, gravel and sand and is usually bound together by ice. But now a warming planet is causing the glaciers to melt. Our protective white layer is melting more rapidly than we can imagine. According to a new study, the northern permafrost region is emitting more greenhouse gases into the atmosphere than it is capturing. This is a consequence of global warming. The new research suggests that this region, which is a quarter of the northern hemisphere, is projected to shift from a net sink to a net source of carbon due to global warming. In the study published in the journal Global Biochemical Cycles, researchers prepared a comprehensive estimation of quantities of emissions and capturing of carbon dioxide, methane and nitrous oxide between 2000 and 2020 in and around the Arctic. The researchers found the region emitted 38 million tons of methane, 670,000 tons of nitrous oxide and 12 million tons of carbon dioxide. While there was a definitive conclusion about the region being a net source of methane and nitrous oxide, the research was uncertain whether it was a source of a sink of carbon dioxide. As on one hand, terrestrial ecosystems remained a carbon dioxide sink, but emissions from fires and inland waters largely offset it. Vultures in Southeast Asia, including in India, face a steep decline in their population, prompting the researchers across the Indian subcontinent to trace back to the source of the problem. A new study has found that vultures are dying due to fatal poisoning from feeding on livestock carcasses, and a drug to blame there is. Scientists have found that diclofenac is behind the deaths and rapid deterioration of India's vulture population. Now, diclofenac is a painkiller widely used to treat cattle. The new finding has challenged the previous assumption that vultures were safe from the anti-inflammatory drug, which is diclofenac. In fact, it is now evident that they are at risk from the residues of this drug that linger on in the carcasses of animals. According to scientists, vultures who feed on the carcasses of the livestock died due to kidney failure. The drug was authorized for use in animals in 1993. but has since been banned by many Southeast nations due to its dangerous health repercussions for birds. The fatal consequence of diclofenac in vultures came to light after scientists analyzed DNA from 642 fecal samples collected between 2018 and 2022. The samples were collected from protected areas as well as the surrounding areas in Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan and Himachal Pradesh. Researchers then proceeded to examine the vulture's diet. In what came out to be a stunning discovery, the fecal samples of the vultures contained genetic material of the domestic livestock that had traces of diclofenac. Now, despite changing cattle carcass disposal practices, vultures, even within the protected areas, could potentially feed on dead livestock due to their extensive foraging range. The Indian government banned diclofenac and other toxic drugs such as ketoprofen and aceclofenac, deemed harmful for the birds. Now, this came after GYPS vultures, or the gyps, who were consuming cattle, died in millions during the 1990s and early 2000s. Despite the ban, the drug continues to be manufactured for human medical use. The European Commission had earlier asked the EMA to investigate risks associated with diclofenac in depth, to be able to draft effective plan of action and mitigation measures to safeguard the vulture population. Temperatures in Bangladesh have touched 43 degrees Celsius. The scorching rise in heat comes amid a week-long heat wave that is sweeping through the country. Authorities issued a nationwide heat wave alert on Monday, which is to remain effective through the week. In fact, schools have been shut for a week and advisories have been issued for staying outdoors over fears of a heat stroke. Daily wage earners and outdoor workers have been left stranded amid the rising heat. Listen to this.
Believable. I can barely paddle today, and after every 2 trips, I need to take a rest and drink water.
Due to the heat, I can barely keep my eyes open in the sun. I feel like leaving everything and return to my village. But I know it's not practical. It feels better to sit under any shadow of a tree. Can't walk much in this situation.
The government has asked all hospitals to be on standby to deal with the possibility of a rampant rise in cases of heat strokes and dehydration. Some animals in the zoo across the country have also been left suffering due to the heat. Talking about bad weather, and let's also now talk about good weather, where the tourists and travelers, for them, good weather is one of the reasons they travel to other countries. In winter, people travel to beaches, and in summers, they travel to hills and snowy mountains. But what if I tell you that some travel-worthy European countries could lose more than 30 days of comfortable weather a year by 2100? The impact of global warming of 1.5 C or 2 C on average is hard to imagine in real life. And so researchers at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology have come up with a new way to measure this real-life change and predict its long-term effects. Using data from 50 different climate models, they charted how the number of outdoor days in various destinations around the world will go up or down by the year 2100. Outdoor days refers to the period of 24 hours when temperatures are pleasant enough for most people to do outdoor activities, whether work or leisure. Now, those are the days when it isn't too hot or too cold, in which the scientists consider to roughly be between 10 degrees and 25 degrees centigrade, and no extreme weather events occur. There is a north-south split in Europe when it comes to outdoor days. In the north, there will be more days with comfortable weather as winters warm. In the south, extreme heat during summer months will cause the number of outdoor days to drop. According to the MIT data, the Balkans is likely to be one of the most heavily impacted regions in Europe. Albania will lose 30 days, Serbia 26 days, Croatia 22 days, North Macedonia 21 days, Bulgaria 17 days, Kosovo 19 days, and Romania 12 days. A little further south, Greece could lose 37 outdoor days a year by 2100 due to extreme heat between May and September. The Iberian Peninsula will also see changes, with Portugal experiencing 33 fewer outdoors days and Spain 13. Meanwhile, though countries in Northern Europe are likely to gain outdoor days due to climate change, that is not good news either. France, Germany and Austria will gain between 18 and 52 days of comfortable weather by 2100. And that is largely due to warmer winters. But this could be a blow for Europe's already struggling ski industry. Popular tropical locales like the Dominican Republic will suffer the greatest decline in temperature year-round weather, with 124 fewer outdoor days per year. While Mexico, India, Thailand and Egypt will lose between 55 and 86 outdoor days annually. The data highlights how climate change will alter the places that the tourists visit. It has implications not just for where people will go and when they will travel, but also for the tourism economies of countries that rely on vacationers. Negotiators from over 175 countries are gathering in the Canadian capital of Ottawa to hold talks on a global treaty to reduce plastic pollution. The treaty aims to facilitate coordinated global action and cooperation towards a future free of plastic pollution. But the parties are deeply divided over the measures that the treaty should include. Over 175 nations in March of 2022 had agreed to formulate the first legally binding global treaty on plastics pollution by the end of 2024. This week, members began negotiations to consolidate measures to cut plastic production and end single-use plastic pollution. Calls for bold global action and the right tone setting to stop the rapidly escalating problem of plastic pollution are growing louder. While the UN's deadline for the treaty is towards the end of this year, the chances of progress this week appear dim.
Countries had, with the global biodiversity framework adopted almost 1.5 years ago, they had addressed the issue of plastic pollution with a biodiversity lens. And so it's important that the future plastic treaty refers to these obligations to fighting plastic pollution, because biodiversity is endangered with this issue.
The chair at the UN-led talks in Ottawa insists that members must not fail, reiterating the urgency to act fast. The United Nations Environment Programme estimated that each day an equivalent of 2,000 garbage trucks full of plastic is dumped into the world's oceans, rivers and lakes. This is a threat to the environment as well as human health.
It's really important that it's tried and tested to make sure that we don't repeat the mistakes of the past.
Now, despite the dangerous impact on oceans and climate, plastic production continues to rise globally and is projected to double or go up by 3 times by 2050 if nothing changes. Greenhouse gas emissions, meanwhile, would more than double. Environmental activists are pleading for a 75% cut in plastic production by 2040. But this goal is at odds with the oil-producing nations and the plastics industry. The International Union for the Conservation of Nature is urging countries to include in the treaty concerns about plastics' impact on biodiversity. Climate experts, on the other hand, are encouraging nations not to avoid taking difficult decisions. The previous negotiations in Nairobi had stalled last November after the oil-producing nations focused on waste management rather than cutting down the production of plastic. Dams holding vast amounts of uranium mine tailings above the fertile Fergana Valley in Central Asia are unstable. Studies have revealed that they are threatening a possible Chernobyl-scale nuclear disaster, and if they collapse, that would make the region uninhabitable. More details in our next report.
There is a vast amount of nuclear waste in these scenic hills in Kyrgyzstan. But studies say dams containing the millions of gallons of uranium mine tailings here, near the town of Malesu, are unstable. The waste is close to a river system above a fertile valley in Central Asia, and the area is prone to earthquakes. Some predict a possible Chernobyl-scale disaster if the dams give out. The most dangerous thing here is a landslide from the opposite slope, says Islambek Altumashev, an engineer with a local radiology lab. The area near the town of Malesu was one of the world's biggest uranium ore dumps, developed by the Soviet Union between the 1940s and 60s. The dams currently hold about 185 million gallons of tailings, or about 280 Olympic-sized swimming pools. A landslide in 2017 made the dams unstable. Another one, or an earthquake, could spell disaster. If the dams give way, contaminated water could flow into the river and into the Fergana Valley. It stretches across areas in Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan, home to about 16 million people, many of whom cultivate various crops. Studies at a Soviet-era radioactive waste disposal facility suggest millions of people could be displaced in the event of a disaster. The studies are part of a project by the European Commission and European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. They show the waste cannot be safely contained where it is and has got to be moved away from the river's banks. Aybek Kozibayev with the country's Tailings Management Agency explains the scope.
Within the frameworks of this project, 16 tailing dumps are supposed to be recultivated. 4 of the tailing dumps are going to be moved to safe locations.
It could cost over $26 million to move the waste from 2 unsafe locations to one further away from the river. At his Kyrgyzstan orchard, resident Tokhtobek Berdy Bekov says that can't happen soon enough. The most important thing is for us to get rid of the tailing dump, the one over the corner. It is dangerous, without any doubt, he says.
Winter has made a surprise return in Finland, and the entire area has been covered with heavy snow. Take a look at these visuals. All right, with that, we come to the end of today's edition of WION Climate Tracker. But stay with us because we have for you the legendary cricketer Ricky Ponting. And of course, he's the head coach of the Delhi Capitals as well. You don't want to miss that.